Hello there and welcome. So today I'm talking about riding in the rain, not surprisingly. I've got to go out, taking the bike for service to BMW at Tunbridge Wells. And I know I've been requested to do a video about riding in the rain because it's something a lot of you don't like. So we'll have a look at it and see how we get on. So I think the first thing I can say about riding in the rain is relax. Now that's so easy for me to say, isn't it? But a lot of people have said to me in the past, when it rains my bike rides horribly. And the reason it rides horribly is it's because you're tense. So you stop it from doing what it needs to do. And we can understand it because a lot of us fear that the tyres are just going to let go, it's going to slide sideways. So we try and keep the bike absolutely upright as much as we can. And then we start to get a little bit of tension in those muscles because we don't want to lean it. We can't possibly lean it around this roundabout. And then we start to worry. But generally speaking, you're not going to have an issue. If I recall correctly, and I stand to be corrected here, I think crash investigators work on a loss of grip of about 25% in the wet versus the dry. And that sounds a lot, a quarter of your grip. Having said that, a lot of people will underestimate their tyre grip in the dry anyway, so it's not as awful as it sounds. So the other things we have to think about are lack of visibility. You know, you're getting spray from other vehicles, you're getting water on your visor. This is why a clean visor is very important, because it allows that water to run off and not cling so much. And at higher speeds we're fortunate that the water will clear, generally speaking. I have had horrendous rain where I can't see, and I've sometimes cracked the visor open, and of course wearing glasses, it then goes on the glasses and it won't clear off of the glasses in the same way that it does the visor, so you end up having to stop and wipe them. And of course steaming up visors can be a huge issue as well. These pin lock devices that stop the visor from misting are really good, and there's various other ways we can get our visors not to mist up. Some people used to rub shower gel on the inside of them, and there are anti-mist sprays. So of course if our visibility is poor for whatever reason, it could be the weather itself, the intensity of the rain, the spray, the visor, you've got to make sure your speed's reduced. The old rule of stopping in the distance you can see to be clear is very appropriate, no matter what the weather conditions. So we are going to alter our speed a little bit. Now that doesn't mean we crawl around. We don't start riding unnecessarily slowly just because it's raining, because that's very likely to produce another problem all of its own making. Let's just get some petrol and then we'll continue this. So petrol station forecourts can have diesel slips on them, so be very cautious, especially when it's wet. A little bit of metal work there. So metal work on the road, that's something we definitely have to be cautious of when wet, because it can be very slippery, as can some white lines. Now to be honest, when it's raining hard, and there's been plenty of rain, apart from surface water, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's better than the odd light shower or the damp road after a long dry spell, because that is lifesavers useful, isn't it? There we go. Right, so after a long dry spell where you get so much in the way of rubber deposits on the road, and might be a bit of oil, a bit of diesel, a bit of grease, and then you get a light bit of rain, that mixes and that makes the road surface quite slippery. When you've had a lot of good rain and the rain's washing stuff to the side, it makes the surface quite reasonable. Now of course the road temperature is lower because of the rain, and the rain forms a little bit of a barrier between the rubber, if you like, hence why we need good tyre grip, so that those treads can disperse the water and therefore the rubber can touch the road. So you're never going to have as much grip in the wet, as warm tyres generally grip a warm road much better, don't they? If we ride carefully and sensibly, it shouldn't be a big deal to us. And I always say, if you've learnt to ride properly from the word go, and you have that as your discipline, you know, you ride smoothly, riding in the rain doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't have to be the biggest issue in the world at all. Sudden movements are not helpful. Bikes don't like sudden, they don't like being surprised. You know, tyres don't like it, and they will let go. And they'll let go quicker in the wet the more careless and clumsy you are. I often say to my students when I first teach them to ride a bike, you know, they've never been on a bike before, and I always say we're going to do this smoothly. Everything is going to be done with the utmost care. They go, cool, that's a bit fussy. And yeah, maybe it is, but if you hardwire that into your ride right from the word go, that's always going to be the way that you ride a motorcycle. And on days like today, that smoothness could make the difference between keeping your tyres gripping the road or not. So I'm just looking at the road surface here. We've got quite a lot of surface water coming down. One thing I'm always aware of is aquaplaning. Now, bikes, generally speaking, are less likely to aquaplane than a car. They have less surface rubber to float on top of the water. You know, the tyre profile being more rounded rather than square. But it's still something we do need to consider, and if you didn't have very good tyre grip, then quite possibly you could aquaplane. And aquaplaning is obviously dangerous because it's like riding on ice. You have no steering, no braking, no acceleration. And that's why riding too fast sometimes can be very, very problematic. So naturally, one of the most important things to remember as well is stopping distances are going to increase. So we always talk about a minimum at least 2 seconds away from the vehicle in front. And in the wet we double it, so we should be talking 4 seconds. Now in reality you'll see that that very rarely happens with people. And I'm going to go down the motorway now, down on the M2, and what I'll probably find is that I'll endeavour to do that, and what you'll notice is that people will keep pulling in front of me and messing up my stopping distance. And it's very difficult to have that perfect discipline when other road users are going to completely mess it up for you. Like here, I need to come out of here fairly promptly, but I've got to maintain smooth use. I can't suddenly put the power on to try and escape quickly. I can't ride quite like I do in the dry. And although this bike's full of traction control and ABS and lots of intelligent electronics, I do not want my tyre spinning sideways and throwing me off the bike. You can see my mirrors there are not clear, so my observations, I've got to be really good. My visor's very, very covered in rain, my mirrors are covered in rain, got a little bit of condensation. I am looking over the screen, they've got a lot of spray on the road. We've got to be damn right careful, you know, we really have. Be absolutely meticulous in everything that we do. Of course, if you imagine this was night time, you'd find it was even worse. And sometimes it's best just to settle yourself down in lane 1 on a motorway like this, keep your stopping distance, and just take your time. You know, I'm constantly trying to look through. I don't wipe the visor. I mean, some motorcycle gloves have got like a little windscreen wiper rubber on them, and they're quite good to wipe the visor. If I wipe my visor with my standard gloves, all I'm likely to do is smear it, and some of the road dirt that's accumulated on it from the journey already, and if there's a little bit of grease or something in the rain that's landing on the visor from the road, I won't be able to see anything through it at all. So to a degree, I have to make that decision. Do I wipe it, or do I just allow the rain and the wind to clear naturally? And that's what I'm going to do at the moment, because at least I have an unsmeary vision. So very often I will change gear a little bit earlier than I would normally, just to make sure things stay nice and smooth at the rear. I mean, I always like to ride smoothly anyway, but if you're one of those people that are a little bit aggressive and a little bit heavy-handed with the controls, it's not going to work for you in the wet. Now, with the spray that we get off of the HGVs, I want to make sure I've got somewhere to go, and I'm going to gently push past the HGV fairly promptly. I don't want to be within the scope of that spray for any longer than I need to be. I want to get a bit of clear view. So once I'm happy that I've got somewhere to go, I'm going to get on with it. Smoothly, of course. It's like now, I'm not going to push on, that car's preventing me to go past. Now it's good. A little check in that mirror. And I'm scanning the road surface ahead. And I am aware of plenty of surface water. Of course, on the motorway we're fairly upright, so it's not too shocking. But I have to remember that if I need to brake, I am travelling at relatively high speeds, and at the moment, you know, I'm happy to do 70 now. I've got good tyres on the bike. Where I'm going to be particularly, and I can just feel that water, believe it or not, I can actually feel the difference. Where I'm going to be particularly cautious, if you like, is on these bends. The motorway bends are not sharp for obvious reasons, but if you were to be going particularly quick on a motorway bend or any bend and you aquaplaned, your bike will continue going in the direction that you were going when you aquaplaned. So in other words, if you aquaplane halfway through the bend, you're going to go into the central reservation after the halfway point. Like here, we've got that heavy, I've got no idea what's in front of it at the moment. He's kicking up loads of spray. It's like riding in fog, isn't it? Don't want to get in the blind spot of the Mini, but I am, so I'm just going to clear that now, and then I'm going to just loiter behind this one, let the HGV clear, let my eyes adjust. Yep, that's all good. Little mirror check there, plenty of spray from these two, plenty of surface water. And would you believe, I mean, this bit of motorway here is the M2 between junctions 6 and 5. This stretch of motorway in either direction is notorious for collisions, and you'd think, why? It's not a difficult piece of motorway. You know, I'm very familiar with this road. I've known it for many, many years. I used to patrol it in the 90s, and it just never ceases to amaze me why it is so notorious for collisions, but it is. So before I came out today, my lightning app told me that there was a thunderstorm about, and of course all good motorcyclists always like to check the weather and look out the window before they leave, because it's like, what kit am I going to wear today? And sure enough, we had to have some waterproof kit on. And just before I left, it started to rain quite heavily. Forecast said it was going to be sunshine and showers. Well, this isn't a shower, this is, you know, protracted rain. This is not ending at all at the moment, and the sky has a little bit of clarity in places, but it's not fantastic. The last thing you want to do is come out in the wrong sort of kit, because being wet and subsequently you will be cold is so bad for you. So the other thing here, my lines are always very clean and smooth, but more so important in the wet. We don't want sudden angular changes of movement in the wet. We want to give the tyres the maximum chance to grip. You know, a bike is more stable when it's upright. The leaning puts extra pressure on the tyres. So we've got the double arrows here. So technically, and you can see even myself, quite difficult to achieve. In the wet, we should be 4 arrows apart. And I'm not. Try and make a conscious effort to increase the stopping distance even more. Let's try and get 4 arrows apart, and let's see what that looks like. See, on the motorway it's going to be so difficult for me to achieve that, because if I do, I'm going to be slowing traffic down behind me. So I'm just about 3 arrows apart now. Bearing in mind that white paint can be slippery as well, especially under braking. There we go, so that's about 3 arrows from that van in front. So if that van stopped or hit the central reservation, could I stop safely in that distance I can see to be clear? Now, knowing my bike, as I do, and knowing my braking capabilities, I actually think I could. I can't practice it today for obvious reasons. We'd cause a collision. But it just gives you an idea, doesn't it? You know, we often moan about people not having the correct stopping distances, but when you look at that stopping distance as I'm viewing it from here, it's like it's almost unachievable in real terms. It's almost unachievable on a busy motorway for sure. On a quiet one, no problem. So I think that riding in the rain will probably hone a motorcyclist's planning skills. Well, at least it should do. I remember some time ago a student failing his test. He took it in the rain. He was turning left at a roundabout, and off of the roundabout there were two metal drain covers. And he took the route that he'd been taught, generally speaking, which is that use the centre of your lane. So he used the centre of his lane, and his back tyre hit two of these drain covers, and the back end stepped out a fraction. It stepped out, it gripped the tarmac, and he was fine. It's a little bit unsettling, and he was failed for it. Quite rightly so, because it was potential loss of control. When you ride, you've got to realise that the lines that you take in the dry and the lines that you may be taught in general default, if you like that word, I don't, but in default riding, road positioning, they're different in the wet. You can't do it. You have to be flexible. This is why I always like to teach flexibility in road positioning. And that's why sometimes when we're out on the open road we can't carry the speed that we'd like to in the wet, because you're not going to be always in the best position on bends or on the approach to bends, because there could be metal work. And the last thing you want to be doing is leaning that bike over at its extreme. Not that you should be doing that in the wet or the dry, but I know what some people will have a bit of fun. And that's when it can cause a problem, because then you get all unsettled mid-bend because you suddenly see this drain cover, and then you're having to sit the bike upright, you're in the wrong position, you're carrying too much speed, and now your little nightmare starts to unfold. It's always best to err on the side of caution, you know. Okay, so I'm going to be taking the next exit off now for the A249. So I've got a slip road. That slip road sometimes can be relatively sharp. What if there's a diesel spill? What if there's rivers of water running down the slip road? You know, there's quite a lot of surface water here. Look. I'm going to try and ride on the driest patch that's been cleared by the car tyres. You can see where that water is laying. So when I take the slip road, I'm not going to go hacking round there. I'm going to have a little bit of caution. And my gear needs to be flexible but not too high, because I don't want any throttle responses to start spinning the back wheel too rapidly. I want a little bit of calm. I'm going to have to slow on the main carriageway, which I don't like because the BMW is slowing me down. See, I don't like being at 45 on a live carriageway. Very unhelpful, so I'm going to get off the carriageway as quickly as I can. Bearing in mind we've got to cross white paint. Not a problem though. So I'm going to stay slightly to the offside of the bend. I'm in fourth, and I think that's quite nice really for me at the moment. I'm just going to tease it round. Bit of gentle lean angle. You can see the water there. I'm assessing the road. It's not too bad actually. Sometimes difficult to tell if there's diesel. And we have a bit of gentle early braking, checking that rear end. Going to pop the visor up for a clearer view at low speeds now. We talk about local knowledge. I mean, for years I've known this road system here, but they are doing a lot of road works on it. And I'm going to err on the side of caution today. I'm not going to go tearing up there or doing any filtering or anything. I'm just going to keep a good check to my rear, and I'm going to go with it until I can get a better view of the road surface and the road layout. So while we were waiting at the traffic lights there, I was just having a quick chat with my mate on the radio, and we're just saying, obviously not chatting on the radio whilst riding was a real bonus today, because it can be a problem for your concentration. It can be distracting, and when the road system and when the roads are like they are with this weather and everything's going on, you don't want other distractions. It's just not helpful. You know, some people will just ride blindly or drive blindly fast like it's any other day. They take absolutely no consideration of the weather conditions at all. It's very foolish. People get preoccupied by the purpose of the journey, as we've discussed before. And, you know, by and large, they get away with it, nothing happens. But on a bike, you don't want to be in a situation because you're gambling. You're gambling in any vehicle. But as motorcyclists, we know the risks more than car drivers, I believe. I mean, they're, you know, suddenly slow to surface water where you've got hills, gradients, or where there's banks by the side of the road, fields. You know, a lot of water can wash off onto the main carriageway, and it's very difficult to look at every bit of geography when you're riding because you are focusing on the road. But some of the geographical features that you may notice may give you a clue as to when you're going to hit a lot of surface water. And if you are on surface water, the thing to do is to do everything gently. In an ideal world where you've got really bad road conditions, you don't want to be using the brakes. You really don't want to be using the throttle in a firm way at all. And one thing I see sometimes with some people is they snap the throttle shut. So they'll have the throttle open, they think I need to slow, and they'll close the throttle very quickly. That's not a good idea. You should gently roll the throttle forward because we're back to not surprising the bike. The rain's fairly light now by comparison, but of course we have been left with good quantities of surface water on the road. And what we're going to find now we're in September going in towards autumn, is that it's very likely you're going to start getting a leaf drop on the road. And I remember years ago doing a training course, we were coming up to a stop junction onto a 50-mile-an-hour road, and probably for at least 3 meters right on top of the junction was continual leaf drop, golden brown leaves, and it had been raining. Now you imagine braking late on those, sliding your bike and going out to the main carriageway, and you'd probably be lucky if there was nothing coming on that main road where you had to stop and give way. So what do? This is why Ford Vision's so important. If you see those things early, you're going to brake early, you're going to get all your speed off. Then when it comes to braking on those leaves for your final stop, it can be done so gently on a rear brake only. Then you've got so much less chance of having a loss of control. Mud, of course, very unhelpful. Wet, sticky mud, very slippery. We often talk in CBT, you know, about the road surfaces and things that can cause you a problem. Just rolling off gently for the 50 now. Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about oil and diesel, and we talk about little rainbow patches on the road in CBT. You know, if you can see a rainbow patch on the road, in all fairness, where that car is ahead is where I'm assessing a road surface. I am assessing it constantly a little bit closer to me as well, but what I don't want to be doing is suddenly swerving around something. I mean, sometimes those rainbow patches are petrol, and actually I don't find petrol on the road slippery.